Barakata Yahweh, Barakata Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Barakahakwadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who rule and teach well. In peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure until the end. Shabbat Shalom. This is the Brother Ra'aya coming at you with another lesson, and I'll be profiling parts of this video from Kim Iverson's YouTube channel titled Mayday, America's Food System is Collapsing. And you know, these U.S. farmers are really going through it, you know, with a lot of these different policies, you know, from the Trump administration, with the, you know, the tariffs and trade wars, stuff like that. But, you know, as we're going to see in this clip, you know, America's food system is very fragile, and there is going to come a time to where you're going to see, you know, empty store shelves like you did during the C-19, during 2019 to 2022. But hey, they aren't going to get refilled. They're going to be food shortages. They're going to be riots, you know, home invasions, all these things. And it's all the judgments of Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai for the wickedness, you know, you people have been committing, especially in America. But started off with Matthew 24, verse 7. And this is Yahweh Shai, the Son of the Most High, whom the world ignorantly refers to as so-called Jesus speaking. And he was telling his disciples of the end time signs to look for, to know that, you know, his second coming was nigh and the kingdom of heaven was at hand, and that the age of the heathens ruling was, you know, coming to an end. For nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. And all these things are either in the process of taking place or taking place as we speak. But as it says in verse 8, all these are the beginning of sorrows, just the birth pains. It's going to get a hell of a lot worse going forward as we get deeper and deeper into Jacob's trouble. The worst point, worse than any other thing you can imagine in human history. But I'm going to jump around a bit in this video, and this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
Joe Maxwell, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you, Kim. It's great to be on the show and appreciate your interest in this vital topic to us American farmers.
Well, I think it should be a vital topic for all people, considering we all eat food, right?
That's right.
Okay, let's talk about what the problem is. What are the challenges that farmers are facing right now?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important for everyone in the country to know, and you're exactly right, all of us are part of agriculture, right, because we're eaters. Right now, the current agricultural policy system in the United States has failed. We're losing 60 family farmers a day. We have an agricultural trade deficit that's going to be a record of $47 billion. And we have a concentrated marketplace that farmers never know certainty on how much they're going to be paid for their crops when they plant the seed. We now are involved in...
And, you know, the government shutdown has a lot to do with that as well. They can't get access to, you know, vital information that they need to, you know, plan ahead and, you know, as this guy was going into, you know, see how much they're making or expect to make.
Tariffs and trade wars and government shutdowns, providing only more cost, less opportunity to market, and greater uncertainty as we head into this next growing season. And finally, it's failing all of us because we are not feeding our citizens. Big Ag, the largest corporations, keep saying, we feed the world, the United States. The agriculture powerhouse of the United States does not feed even ourselves. We're importing 60% of our fruits, a third of our vegetables. and the tariffs on those items, consumers are seeing that at the grocery store. We have a sick population. We're unhealthy. Our food system is driving the negative results of health. So it's a failed system. And those are the things that we're facing as farmers and as a public in the United States.
Okay, it seems just right off the
And it's going to continue to fail. Again, what did Yahweh Shai say to look for? That there would be famines. And when you read, in 2nd Esdras 15, which we're going to get a little bit of, and even in 2nd Esdras 16, one of the main ways Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai is going to judge, you people out here and take you out in great numbers is by famines.
really concerning that we're importing a lot of our food. That doesn't seem like it's great for national security. I mean, we saw what happened during COVID with shutdowns. What happens if the supply chains crash? I mean, what if there's...
And that was, some crazy information for me to hear as well, because as that guy was saying, you always hear about America feeding the world, but come to find out, a lot of our food is imported. And then, you've got these tariffs, affecting things here and there, raising the prices. But that just goes to show how fragile, our food system is, and, how easily, it can be, disrupted to bring about that panic out here, which is the plan of the elites, to bring about the chaos and then the order to reform it, which is you ultimately getting a micro C-hip implant in your body, the MOTB, the mark in Revelation 13, verses 16 to 18.
World War, which we're constantly seemingly on the brink of. What would happen to our supply? What would happen to our food supply in the event of the supply chain breaking down? What would you say?
Well, consumers would go to the grocery store and there wouldn't be anything on the shelves. We're in.
And however it plays out, best believe it's going to play out. Thus saith Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. And what did he just say? If there's a disruption, what can Americans expect? To go to the stores and see empty store shelves. This is 2nd Esdras chapter 6 in the Apocrypha, verse 22. And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. These croplands out here, which, due to, all these different factors affecting these farmers, you don't have a sufficient amount of crops, being planted. And then with a lot of those ice raids on farms, you haven't had the Northern Kingdom or so-called Latino workers showing up, causing a lot of those crops to just rot in the fields. And then, with this trade war with China, China has been, looking to alternatives of buying U.S. soybeans. And, you got a meeting this Thursday between Trump and China's President Xi. And, they're saying things like, we've already come to some agreements before the meeting to, remend relations. But ultimately, things are just going to get worse. The U.S. economy, political system, everything, the grid, the food supply is going to collapse, and there will be a World War III. So no peace is on the horizon. Again, this is all just the beginning of sorrows. And suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown, the full storehouses, these grocery stores, shall suddenly be found empty store shelves.
In a serious national security and food security issue in this country, and no one on the Capitol Hill is talking about it. What they're talking about is additional bailouts. Know that the bailouts that the president's talking about now, based on the trade war, especially to soybean farmers, will be the third bailout in a year for these commodity crop growers, and it's all dependent upon exports. But when your largest buyer, China, of your soybeans says no, you don't have to wait for a war. When that largest buyer buys about half of the U.S. production, a little over, says no, I'm not buying from you anymore, and goes to South America, you're left with bins full and bankrupt farmers. This is the third bailout. What happens in the time of another pandemic or war? Consumers go hungry, because we're dependent on that our food to be brought in from somewhere else. We don't feed ourselves. We import food, and we raise in America on our farms feed for livestock and crops for fuel, not food for people.
But now I'm gonna jump to the and that's gonna be the look on a lot of you Americans' faces, coming soon. But I'm gonna jump to the 9 minute and 48 second mark.
I got a Mazzato knife, and what followed was an absolute fiasco. Here's what really pisses me off. I've wasted
Yeah.
But before we continue, this is 2nd Esdras chapter 15 in the Apocrypha. I'm going to start at verse 10. Behold, my people is led as a flock to the slaughter. Speaking of you Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, I will not suffer them now to dwell in the land of Egypt, spiritual Egypt, as pursuant to Revelation 11, verse 8, the United States of America. But I will bring them, speaking of the elect, the 1/3 of the elect in America, who are going to, be saved from these coming calamities. But I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm, and smite Egypt with plagues as before, and will destroy all the land thereof. Ultimately, when those nuclear missiles hit this place during World War III, Egypt shall mourn, and the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague and punishment that the Most High shall bring upon it. Which, these different things we're seeing take place in America, from its economic, moral, military decline. These are all different plagues that Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shah is hitting this place with. They that till the ground, farmers, shall mourn, which is what all that video is going into. These farmers mourning due to the tariffs and the trade wars, farms and ranches shutting down. In another video I saw that a brother did, you have an uptick in farmer self-deletions. You've got adverse weather events, destroying farmers as croplands. Like I mentioned earlier, you've got ice keeping the workers scared from showing up to work, which is causing crops to fail. A whole host of issues. They that till the ground shall mourn, for their seeds shall fail. Suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown, for their seeds shall fail through the blasting and the hail, adverse weather events, and with a fearful constellation. All this doom and gloom economically, you name it. Tariffs, trade wars, nations like China looking for alternative buyers instead of buying from U.S. farmers, and then just Trump continuing to screw you over like he did during his previous presidency. Here you have farmers suffering, cattle ranchers included, and now Trump's talking about importing Argentinian beef into the U.S. Just madness.
Yeah.
So,
and then on top of that, as the brother was going into in his previous lesson, you had a cattle rancher complaining that even if it isn't a significant amount of Argentinian beef coming in, U.S. Cattle ranchers can't really compete because there are things in place to where we can't label our beef as U.S. made. And then a lot of these beef packers, they automatically get beef from other countries because it's cheaper, just putting the U.S. cattle rancher at a complete disadvantage.
Agricultural system, you have to understand, and this is what people say all the time, both in the news as well as on the Hill and just out in my community. We feed the world. The concept of that narrative is that means we do a lot of exporting, right? I mean, our whole philosophy has been feed the world. So our programs have driven this production for export. The unfortunate thing is it's abandoned domestic production of food, where we're relying. It's something like, let me look here. I want to just give you an idea of some of this food we're not raising. We're importing 68% of our tomatoes.
Jeez.
68% of the tomatoes now have some tariff on it somewhere. 89% of cucumbers.
Wow.
And 73% of bell peppers. I pulled those out of the stats to come on the show today because sometimes we talk in these big numbers and it doesn't really resonate. I mean, I do this every day, but I get lost in the numbers. But when you think about when you go in the store, almost 70% of those tomatoes there came from outside of this country.
My gosh.
I mean, if you love pasta, you're in trouble in this country, right? I mean, your plate is not going to be full.
Well, not only that, I mean, even importing it from another state is far away. I mean, we're a massive country. So even importing from just a few states away is like a pretty long haul. But I mean, to go all the way to a different country when we're already massive coast to coast, I mean, we're really bringing this food in from a really, which means, of course, it's pumped with, it's got to have genetics, modified genetics, or it's got to have some sort of preservatives.
Sometimes it's ripened with a gas in a container because it's picked green, so that it has shelf life. It's oftentimes less nutrient value in that fruit. There's a lot of things we can talk about that's negative to the health of the citizens.
Which I want to get into that, and we will. But I want to right now just focus on what the White House is doing and kind of the government issue on this. Going back to the exports, so Trump is in a trade war. Is this, he's saying to China, like, pay up. Is he trying to level this out? I mean, if we've been selling historically soybeans to China below market rate and then forcing our own government through lobbies to give the farmers the subsidies in order to sell China this cheaper than what it costs to produce grain, feed, is Trump in this trade war? Is he trying to say, no, we're not going to do that anymore. You need to start paying up. Is that what this is?
We're uncertain as to what the motivation and direction of the president is as it relates to tariffs and a trade war. He's early on, he seems to believe that broad tariffs are the answer, financial answer. They spend some of that money for social programs, that it's a way to fund government. Our belief is, and we've written about that on farmaction.us, that he's living in the past. He has a vision that America today is the America of the 50s or 60s when we had our own manufacturing. I mean, farmers are hit with tariffs, whether that's our equipment. A lot of our equipment's manufactured overseas, or the parts are. We're not unlike any other business getting hit with tariffs. We're a consumer.
America's completely helpless. Like I mentioned in a previous lesson I did, dealing with China and the U.S., the U.S. gets 78% of vital rare earth minerals it needs for its military from China. But at the same time, they're making, military threats and trade war and tariff threats to China. Talk about throwing stones in a glass house. But as this guy is mentioning, which I think, I don't want to keep saying this guy, but I think his name is Joe Maxwell. As Joe Maxwell is saying, Trump believes America, or he's operating in the sense that America is still in its heyday, which America was a powerhouse in the 50s because it was the superpower after World War II, where a lot of manufacturing was taking place. But over the successive decades, these corporations started shutting down the factories and outsourcing the labor and these jobs to these different countries. And all the skills went over there, and now they hold all the cards. And America is just a junkie trying to get its next fix, getting drugs from the suppliers. And, when the suppliers stop selling, that's when everything gets chaotic. But that's just the prideful nature of Esau in general, thinking that, nobody can touch him, and that even if he makes bad decisions, everything's going to go okay because we're, the great United States of America. But this is Obadiah. I'll start at verse 2. the book of Obadiah, chapter 1, which is only one chapter, verse 2. And this whole chapter is dedicated to the judgment and the downfall of you Edomites, you so-called white people. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. And you being made small among the heathen can go into, your numbers globally, because you Edomites are actually, the global minority, and also your reputation being made small. And especially in the West, these other nations are looking at you Edomites in the West as the main problem for all these things taking place on the planet. Verse 3, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? As Joe Maxwell is saying, Trump is operating as if America's still that powerhouse of the 1950s when it's far from it. Verse 4, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and who has used the eagle all throughout their history? Look at the United States of America. Esau, though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, having that proud look and flying high above everybody else, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, which they did with what? Putting all these satellites and other space infrastructure in low orbit space. Hey, Houston has landed, though Houston never landed in that way. Thence will I bring thee down, saith Yahweh. And we can see that Esau's pride and his countries and his economic and military might is being brought down.
We believe he lives in the past where, you could have tariffs because you could rely on your own domestic production.
Right.
In the food area,
the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock.
I don't think he's even thought about this issue. Mm-hmm. I think that, the fact is we import a large part of our food. Right. And so when you put a tariff around the world, a broad tariff, consumers are going to pay more. He tends to want to ignore that fact, but we can't, we're suggesting we need to solve this problem. There's ways we can do that. We need to look to local and regional food systems, healthy foods. There's a way to invest $1 billion that makes sense for the public's health,
right,
or food security, national security. Right now, the White House is not listening to that.
Okay, so let's get into that. It's great if he's trying to correct this issue with us selling feed to, foreign countries at below market rates. That's good. Okay, fine, fix that. But that doesn't solve our bigger problem, which is the national security issue.
One of the things I would say is, if that is his motivation, he can't fix it that way.
Okay, how could
because those countries will just go to another country and buy it cheaper.
Yeah.
Because it's a world market. Soybeans are fungible. In other words, my soybean on my farm in Missouri doesn't look any different than a soybean on a Brazilian farm or anywhere else in the world.
Right.
So, if that is his motivation, will be failed. And that's what's happening today. China just went and purchased 80% of Brazil's soybeans and replaced the U.S. literally overnight. So I don't know, but I do want to say that it will not work. If that is his motivation, it will not work. What will work is when the United States government, the White House, and our Congress put an emphasis on healthy foods and raising those foods here in the United States and shifting acres away from commodity export production and put those acres back into raising food for our citizens and feed America again.
This will be the last video.
It's not going to happen, Jack. It's slated in prophecy for America to go down. That's it with that clip. But as that guy was going into, all these decisions Trump are making is just flat out wrong. This is Isaiah chapter 19. I'm start at verse 14. Yahweh hath mingled a perverse spirit in the midst thereof, and they have caused Egypt, again spiritual Egypt, America, to err in every work thereof, as a drunken man staggereth in his vomit. Every decision, Trump's administration has been making has been backfiring on America, and especially on the average American citizen. Again, with this, these tariffs and trade wars on China, it's supposed to bring all this money back to the U.S. But what? It's leading to higher prices for consumers, and then, U.S. farmers losing business because China is just going to go to a South America to find alternatives for things they originally got from the U.S. Neither shall there be any work for Egypt, which the head or tail, branch or rush may do. More and more job losses out here, from the head, these white collar corporate type jobs, all the way down to the tail, these low wage, low skill jobs, which we can see a lot of these businesses are closing down shops and laying off workers. AI is going to take a lot of jobs across all fields. And then, as Joe Maxwell was saying at the beginning, you got a lot of farmer families just, giving up on farming and, looking into something else. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the brother's other video, you've had a lot of farmers, self-deleting themselves. But now I'm going to jump up to verse 11. Surely the princes of Zoan are fools, and the counsel of the wise counselors of Pharaoh is become brutish. And the Trump administration and the people in it are moving in a very brutish manner, bullying people and making threats, which, they've had to walk back those threats because America just doesn't have that same juice like it did before. And as Joe Maxwell said, Trump is operating as if the U.S. is still that 1950s powerhouse. How say ye unto Pharaoh, I am the son of the wise, the son of ancient kings? Where are they? Where are thy wise men? And let them tell thee now, and let them know what Yahweh of hosts hath purposed upon Egypt, to hit it with plagues as before. The princes of Zoan are become fools. The princes of Noph are deceived. The leadership out here. And, we're currently in this government shutdown where either side, isn't coming to any, middle ground on things, just causing, people in the U.S., to suffer, which as it drags on, Abaratazah, hey, it stays shut down. It stays shut down as long as possible. You're going to see more workers go unpaid. It remains to be seen how intense things are going to look on November 1st when those SNAP benefits, run out, and just all these other things, resulting, from the government shutdown. The princes of Zoan are become fools. The princes of Noph are deceived. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, making all these decisions that are just backfiring, thinking that America is again that powerhouse, which it's not. They have also seduced Egypt, even they that are the stay of the tribes thereof. But ultimately, what all these different things, food insecurity, farmers going out of business, supply chain disruptions are going to lead to are mass famines, starvation, and death and violence out here, which I'm close it out back in 2nd Esdras chapter 15, verse 19. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword. And the modern day sword in America is what? That kinetic device, as Full Spectrum Survival calls it, that shoots freedom seeds, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread, food shortages, famines, and for great tribulation, all these other calamities and judgments that are going to be taking place during Jacob's trouble, which, again, we're just in the beginning of sorrows of right now, and it's only going to get worse going forward. So that's it with this video. With this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We're almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharala, and until next time, Shabbat Shalom.